in general, last class, we talked about all the cranial nerves and their function and where they resided in the brainstem, right? I talked about the fact that there are 4 cranial nerves above the pons, 4 cranial nerves in the pons, and 4 cranial nerves below the pons proper. So we looked at the outside, but today we're going to look at the inside. And I really feel like looking at the inside, if you know the function of the cranial nerve, then you can follow along. What happens is these cranial nerves, they're actually lower motor neurons, just information for you. These are all lower motor neurons, and they work through different nuclei. Okay, so if we looked inside the brainstem, which we're going to do when we get to the cross sections of the brainstem, we would see all the different nuclei. So the first picture that I have up here, we're going to look at all the motor nuclei that are involved for cranial nerves. And again, here's your midbrain, your pons, your medulla. Always like to have a midline, because remember the cranial nerves are going to be bilateral. Thinking about, and I'll start, so cranial nerve number 1 and cranial nerve number 2 do not have any nuclei that are in the brainstem proper. So the first, so if I know 1 and 2 are up here, then I'm going to move down at the level of the superior colliculus. We have the 3rd cranial nerve. Here's the nucleus that it uses. This is the motor nucleus. Okay, so it's going to be bilateral, and this is called your oculomotor nucleus. Okay, your oculomotor nucleus is the one that the 3rd cranial nerve uses to do all of its motor functions. Okay, it's involved in innervating extraocular eye muscles, the majority of them. Right, and then it also has responsibility of innervating levator palpebrae, which is going to be the muscle that's responsible for opening your eye. Okay, so that's going to be one motor nucleus that's associated with the 3rd cranial nerve. And again, trying to keep the colors as consistent as possible. I think before I used a green color, so I'm going to stick with the green color. In addition to the levator palpebrae and extraocular eye muscles, cranial nerve number 3 also has some parasympathetic things that it does. Does anybody remember what those are? Yeah, lens accommodation and pupillary constriction, right? So cranial nerve number 3, to do these things, uses a different nucleus, okay? And this nucleus it's associated with it. It's just kind of right on top, okay? And this is called your Edinger-Westphal nucleus. Edingerwestphal. That's your Edinger-Westphal nucleus. Okay, and since it's green, associate green with the parasympathetic activity. Parasympathetic activity that is under the control of Edinger-Westphal nucleus is going to be pupillary constriction and lens accommodation, which just means changing the shape of your lens. Okay, and these are all the motor nuclei. They're in the brainstem. Okay, ocular motor nucleus and Edinger-Westphal are closely associated, both in the midbrain. That's cranial nerve number 3. Moving on down, cranial nerve number 4 also has a motor nucleus associated with it. It is at the level of the inferior colliculus. It's in the midbrain, and this is going to be your trochlear That's your trochlear nucleus. And what muscle does cranial nerve number 4 innervate? Superior oblique, right. So that's going to be, it has one job in life. That is to innervate superior oblique. Cranial nerve number 4. Okay, so 3, 4, coming down. Cranial nerve number 5 also has some motor functions associated with it. It is a mixed cranial nerve, but it uses a specific nucleus that sits right here in the pons. Okay, this is cranial nerve number 5, and it is the motor nucleus of trigeminal. Motor nucleus of trigeminal nerve. Okay, motor nucleus of trigeminal. And the trigeminal, what kind of motor function does trigeminal have? Muscles of mastication, perfect. Muscles of mastication, so your masseter, temporalis, medial lateral pterygoid muscles. Okay, that's the nucleus that's responsible for the motor functions of cranial nerve number 5. Cranial nerve number 6, again 5 and then 6 you come medial. So associated with cranial nerve number 6, you have the abducens nucleus. And the abducens nucleus has one job in life. Which muscle does it innervate? Lateral rectus, abducens, lateral rectus. So bringing the eye out into abduction, looking outside. Okay, so 3, 4, 5, 3 has ocular motor, Erringer Westphal, 4 is trochlear, 5 is motor nucleus of trigeminal, 6 is abducens nucleus, 7 is the facial nucleus. Okay, so I'll put the facial nucleus right here, right next to 6. Now, the facial nucleus is the nucleus used by cranial nerve number 7. And what kind of motor functions does cranial nerve number 7 have? All muscles of facial expression. And one more. Yeah. Facial expression muscles. And everybody always forgets about poor little stapedius. It's the smallest muscle in the body, but stapedius. Okay. Okay. Now, I'm gonna, so far we've used green for parasympathetic, red for motor. Now I'm gonna switch over to black for the next one going down. And then, so the facial nerve, cranial nerve number 7, also has some functions that have to do with saliva, salivation. Okay, those functions are, they use this nucleus, and this is the superior salivatory nucleus. Okay, the superior salivatory nucleus. And for the superior salivatory nucleus, if cranial nerve number 7 uses this nucleus, what has to do with the salivatory or glandular functions for cranial nerve number 7? Does anybody remember? Submandibular, sublingual, and one more. Lacrimal. Okay? To do all those functions, cranial nerve number 7 uses this particular nucleus. That's cranial nerve number 7. Moving on down, there's another nucleus, So the superior salivatory nucleus is a little bit higher. Right under the superior salivatory, there's the inferior salivatory nucleus. And it's the one that cranial nerve number 9 uses for its glandular function. And this is the inferior, just right below the superior, the inferior salivatory nucleus. And cranial nerve number 9 uses the inferior salivatory nucleus. What's its main function for glands? Parotid. That's your parotid gland. Okay, just going on down. We talked about, actually I don't think I've talked about it yet. Going on down, we're down to cranial nerve number 9. Now there's another nucleus here that's, it doesn't know who it belongs to. I say that because the name of it is, it's the nucleus ambiguus. The nucleus ambiguus is so named because it works for both cranial nerve number 9 and cranial nerve number 10. And it has to do with the motor functions of those nerves. So if I ask you for the motor function of cranial nerve number 9, it has one muscle involved in swallowing, stylopharyngeal. And then that's cranial nerve number 9. And cranial nerve number 10 has other, what does cranial nerve number 10 as far as muscles? Yeah, so it's muscles of the soft palate, pharynx, and larynx. Okay? That's nucleus ambiguous. It works for both cranial nerve 9 and 10. It's kind of ambiguous. It doesn't know who it belongs to, so it uses both. Okay? Now, moving on down, that's number 9 and 10. There's another one for cranial nerve number 10 that has to do with motor function. And here I'm going to represent it. It's the parasympathetic portion of cranial nerve number 10. So, since it's cranial nerve number 10, motor, this is going to be called the dorsal motor nucleus. And it says motor nucleus, but it's really the parasympathetic innervation. Sympathetic for heart, lung, and GI tract. That this is the nucleus that cranial nerve number 10 is going to use of heart, lung, and GI tract. Okay. Dorsal motor nucleus associated with cranial nerve number 10. And then the last big motor nucleus is going to be here, pretty medial. It's kind of a long one too, so it's on both sides. This is going to be associated with cranial nerve number 12. And this is going to be the hypoglossal nucleus. Hypoglossal nucleus associated with cranial nerve number 12 is just responsible for innervating tongue muscles. Lots of motor stuff going on here. Okay, so depending, even though it's one cranial nerve, depending on its function, it might use a different nucleus. First one we talked about is the Edinger-Westphal and ocular motor. Cranial nerve number 3 uses both of those nuclei. We're going to draw that here in a minute. Okay, going down other examples. Cranial nerve number 7, when it does motor function, muscles of facial expression, it's going to use the facial nucleus. But when it's going to innervate anything involved in a glandular function, it's going to use the superior salivatory nucleus. Okay. Dorsal cranial nerve number 10, vagus nerve, it's going to innervate muscles involved in swallowing. It's going to use the nucleus ambiguus. But if you're talking about the parasympathetic innervation of heart, lungs, and GI, it's going to use the dorsal motor nucleus. Does that make sense? Questions about this? Yes, Catherine.
With the nucleus ambiguous, so if something happened to that, then 9 and 10 would both be affected?
Yes, 9 and 10 would both be affected as far as the innervation of muscles is concerned.
Right.
Yes. You lose both. And a lot of times when you're testing 9 and 10, you test them both together. So 9 and 10, in my mind, kind of go together. You can differentiate between sensory and motor by patient presentation. Is there any other questions about that? Hopefully this is going to make some sense. It's 10 minutes. You guys, would you like a break? Okay, let's take a 10-minute break.